What's up, everybody? My name is Kaylin. I am the key keeper. Tonight, I want to listen to some gnosis on the surprising links between the Virgin Mary and Artemis. This is from Gnostic Informant, and I want to listen to this in particular because I have been having a lot of revelations as it relates to femininity and the way the Bible describes femininity in relation to man, and therefore I just want everybody to keep an open mind as we are at Purke's Lake and we are trying to be imbibed with the truth that speaks always. You know, when we put our judgment aside, these uneven weights and measures of mammon, and we start using discernment, where we get a feel for the void's intensities and the dimensions of near and far and being and non-being, all of these polarities that we are trying to syncretize within Christianity. Because at the end of the day, I am at my root Christian, and I would love to be an expression of that without offending anybody who has been traumatized by that name or word being invoked by powers that used the phenomenological manifestation of interpretation against their fellow man. And therefore it is just always my intention to be as transparent with not only like the biases and filters that I have receiving information, but also opening within myself pathways and geometry to artistically appreciate new meanings that I haven't been able to know before, you know. And that is why I love to learn. That is why I can identify with the Enneagram type 5 and everything that our journey at Purke's Lake has been revealing about my astrological placements, such as my Punarvasu sun, which is the Asterian Artemis. I have to recognize that there is knowledge in here meant for me, but there's knowledge in here meant for everybody, and it is not my dictate to say what should be gleaned or made use of or interpreted. I can just tell people how I find my peace with all the moving parts that makes a beautiful interconnected tapestry and weave this watercolor fire spirit of reality into a beautifully self-sustaining, self-revelatory dream arc, manifesting creative impulse that is ever evolving its own expression and nature. And the wind is with us.
Joseph's children, and the infancy gospel of James. It like challenges all scientific logic that we know, and yet people have a lot of faith in this particular document. So I think that's the document that really created this deity. And so it's not an accident that the Black Madonnas are found throughout the world.
Their trinity consisted of Mary, Father, and Jesus. Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. And today, I'm with Dr. Carla Ionescu. Has the channel with the link in the description. Is one of the Goddess Project. I love this channel a lot. If anyone is new, hasn't seen our last live we did, definitely go and check out that channel. Links in the description. Today we're talking about the comparison between Mother of Mary, or even maybe Mary Magdalene, maybe both. I'm not sure where you're at with that, but definitely Mother Mary and Artemis. And well, the reason why I said maybe Mary too, Magdalene too, because I talked to another Egyptologist about the same question with Isis in Egypt, and there was some overlap there. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is happening with another goddess somewhere else as well. Because I think Christianity sort of takes on this role of syncretism, where it kind of, I don't mean this in like they're stealing way. I mean this in like in a normal way. Like, why wouldn't you want to adapt the cultures around you and, respond to all the other cultures around you? So with Mary and Artemis, what's the comparison that we would start off with when we're looking at these two characters in history, in mythology?
Okay, so hi Neil. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at Artemis of Ephesus and the Virgin Mary. Mary Magdalene is a little more different because I think that she is more, I don't know if this is the right word, but more human, more like wife material.
Yeah.
And sort of like the what happens after, like the line that happens after Jesus passes away, if such a line exists, which I think it does, but obviously there's other people with their opinions. But the Virgin Mary, because she becomes Theotokos, she becomes the mother of God, she becomes deified, really fits more with the ancient goddesses. So many scholars call the Virgin Mary's birth the last virgin birth, because there have been many virgin births, right? Like, there's many all over, right, the ancient world. But I think the Christians believed or worked at it to create this last virgin birth. So there's no one to have a virgin birth after Mary. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the reason why I picked Ephesus, and I think a lot of people look at Ephesus, well, there's a couple of reasons. Let's start with the physical ones. The fact that Mary, the mother of Jesus, probably died in Ephesus. There are two locations where Mary, the mother of Jesus, may have died, Virgin Mary. She either died in Jerusalem after her son was killed, or later on, or she went with John to Ephesus. Now, there's a ton of evidence that John went to Ephesus and settled in Ephesus, and John, the brother of Jesus, some Christians think he's just the apostle of Jesus, but whatever. Either way, brother, biological brother, or brother by apostle, same thing. He is the one when Jesus is on the cross and says, take care of your mother, right? And so he is sent then he is believed to take the Virgin Mary and take her to Ephesus. And there's a house, remember, there's a house to the Virgin Mary near the Artemision, which is the temple of Artemis in Ephesus. And this is a house where Mary is said to have lived and died. It's a house where miracles are said to have happened. Young children have had visions of Mary, talking to them. It took a couple hundred years for the church to accept that this is the house of Mary. Now, of course, they accept that. And so this is a house of prayer. It's a sacred site. So that's a physical example.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I ask you before you, just real quick, where does that legend start? Is it early on with that place?
The house of Mary.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say that the very first, I'm going to find my notes here.
Sure.
I would say that the very first instance that people refer to is the fact that Jesus looks at John and says, take your mother away, or keep your mother safe, or keep our mother safe, something like that. So I would say that people begin to follow John. So wherever John ends up.
Okay.
So that would technically be almost right away after the death of Jesus. Because
So this location is where John is staying. Is that what?
That's right. That's right.
Oh, okay.
Technically be almost right away after the death of Jesus. Because
So this location is where John is staying. Is that what?
That's right.
So this picture that just appeared in the background looks like a tomb of marble, and it very much reminds me of what we saw on the Da Vinci Code, which is interesting because that was in Paris, the Louvre, and Paris, and everything that is the fulfillment of that once forbidden and then turned golden apple, or was it the other way around? Hesperides, I don't know. But I love that I get to explore the topic, and I love that there are so many different interpretations as to the substance that bears upon the truth that is stated on the topic.
That's right.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, that's fun.
That would be, I don't know, Jesus dies in 33. John, it depends. Some scholars say that John dies by 100. Well, they say that the Gospel of John is written in 100. So it's unclear whether it's this John that wrote it or another John, right?
By the way, put aside the question of did it happen or not. Like, let's assume that it did. If it did, John would probably have been a young, maybe teenager or something, because if you're going to tell somebody, here's your new son, you're not going to tell it to an old man.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna say, it's like for example, he's on the cross and he's looking at his mom and he sees one of his disciples he's going to choose the one who's the youngest to be, hey, here's your new son, like, mother, here's your new mother. You're not going to find the 75-year-old man and say, here's your new son. That's going to be the young one. So it would make sense that he was a young boy when Jesus was around, and then sort of like carried on this tradition to a different place.
Yeah, I mean, so academically speaking,
I know this is probably way out there, but just Kendrick Lamar apprenticing Tupac Shakur. It's just giving me like a flash in my mind, and I'm just gonna add it to the at Pure Keys Lake until I can figure out whatever that's supposed to mean. In its wholeness, I can add the fractal to how it interweaves within this density of a topic, i.e. Virgin Mary and Artemis links via Gnostic informants.
Jesus is said to have 3 biological brothers, James, John, Philip, and 2 sisters. Okay, so academically speaking, Jesus is said to have 3 biological brothers, James, John, Philip, and 2 sisters. It's unclear so James seems to be the older after Jesus, right? So Jesus is first. There are some people that argue that these are Joseph's children, and then Mary comes along and she has Jesus. There's that argument, but most, I don't want to put them all under the same umbrella, but most scholars will say Jesus is first, and then of course Mary and Joseph would have had children like everyone else. So John is, I can't tell if he's between James and Philip, or, I mean, there's no real evidence for this. This is more like a guess, an academic guess. So
I've heard people make the case that he was a twin.
that he was a twin.
Which is very odd, because it's like, if he's a twin, then what's up with the other brother? What's going on? Like,
Yeah.
he just didn't get any. He just wasn't. I don't know. I've heard that before though.
I don't know
Where did you heard that from?
I don't know what they
This moment recapitulates our studies of Punarvasu, Asterian Artemis, Thomas Didymus, Yemo, the Cosmic Man, the Book of 1, 2, 3, and 4, A, B, C, and D, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and Earth, and the divine twins of the Dioscuri, Ashwini Kumaras of Aries, which is esoterically ruled as per Alice Bailey by Mercury, the exaltation point of the Sun in a Ketu ruled nakshatra, i.e. Ashwini, is the third, and Gemini Navamshapada of Aries. Also, the birth of Mercury is in a Ashlesha Ketu birthed nakshatra, which is very interesting because it's a son of the sun type of thing. And just everything that we have been learning about opera and operations and queer coding for transitioning and divine androgyne, male to female, simulacrus, Sophia, generations, and it's the Eve Lilith split of the Prakriti Niriti of Punarvasu as well. So yeah, what is womb man in this context if God created man, I really think that, as Morg Official pointed out in that other live reaction that we did, if you watch a couple of videos back on my channel, it is questions that is valuable to be asked in this context, because as we have heard, Christianity does syncretize cross-culturally with so many ethics by imploring the sacred words in such a tapestry so as to be a economic code of the holisms in evolution of time. And whether or not we have different denominations and factions and everything that the Gnosis kind of like broke up into like the spice of Dune, there's something of a like a worm spirit that kind of like ultimately still brings all of these siphoning influences together in some sort of golden thread.
I can't remember who said that, but think about it, that Bart Ehrman actually.
I love
You said something like this is obviously all
a eulogic genealogy generation. The question whether Jesus was an actual historical person, at this point I feel like it is moot, because just the sheer amount of astral energy that is believed into that, it already created the timeline for it to happen, and therefore it did. If that makes any sense, just in terms of like how reality is the eternal now. And that's why we can syncretize different Christed figures or cupbearers or Ganymedes or figures who went through the Enneagram and went through the 12 signs or the 12 labors or the 9 gates of hell or the 7 chakras of the yogi. There's always 12 and 7 and 4, and 5 and 6 to a lesser extent. We get the 5 elements, and we get 6 as it relates to everything that everybody knows. 6 means, I don't have a clear idea of what it means, because it's a connecting principle and it's a internalization of connection, like Virgo, whereas Pisces is that permeation and artistic externalization of all of that intellectualism. And that's why the Revati Mercury ruled nakshatra is the exaltation point of Venus, where we learn in the Greek system Mercury and Venus collapsed into one understanding. Initially they thought one was a morning star and an evening star, and then it both turned out to be Mercury or Venus. Check out Slick Dissident's channel where he also discussed that. And if you go through some of the videos on my channel, there are videos in which I do mention that, and there's a video in which I include some of Slick Dissident's work as reflection pieces and meditation guides, or just like shamanic apprentice guides. I don't really know what to call it. It's just like I sit in conversation with these concepts, and I don't allow myself to have the separation of the cell phone as a barrier, or even just the personhood as, I understand the intellectual boundary that exists between what I can know based on what they express and what I fill in based on what I feel impressed by, and the needs and the voids that is stimulated from my unconscious to want to see recognized and fulfilled in answers and questions that I seek towards the Tower of Babel I build to make the Ark of the Covenant within the guild of all that I know to be pure, and within my shield, because that is the armor of Athena, that is Virgo Monosaurus, the unicorn, perfectly born, immaculately conceived. Because you don't forget what was, and you braid into what must be.
All this stuff that we're saying, none of this is proven. Like we can't like find like a rock somewhere that says all this stuff. This is all, we're all just like reading between the lines and trying to. And some people are not, just don't like that. Some people are just like, I need to see like a videotape of this stuff for it to.
So loyalist, 6 Enneagram, Uranus.
Be real. I'm not one of those people. I like to take things with a grain of salt, but I also like to take things at face value too, because it's fun to deal with it. We're dealing with these texts, and like sometimes it's
like the Sheldon Cooper type of energy of what that would represent in Slick Dissident's delineation of a loyalist as it relates to Uranus in his Enneagram model, implementing the tarot cards and the Fool, because the way he moves around that journey, it's quite fascinating. I highly recommend you guys check out his channel. And in his Enneagram, number 5 is Hermes, Mercury, and number 4 is Aphrodite, Venus. Which is interesting because we know Velikovsky gives Aphrodite to the moon and Athena to Venus, and the number 1 on his Enneagram, Mars, is Athena, Aries in her shadow element of wrath, and then the number 1 becomes a challenger and an individualist via the positioning of Saturn and Venus. So that's interesting how Saturn, Venus, and all of that relates to like a spear of the 1 opposed to the 6 of the Uranus, because we know the castration story does create a certain bloodlust, i.e. just the titanomachy. And It's very interesting how there's not one part that should really be forgotten, otherwise it's like the story doesn't really make sense except what you want to artistically make of it as a representative of a crystal truth of like one, like I almost want to say like pine cone moment that you hold up to the head of a person. Like if you only tell them like this is what it means, and you don't allow that drawing in of all the light and the connections to speak from every nourishment of the shroom.
I'll just assume as much as possible just to get to a certain place, and then we can discuss those things.
Yes.
That's basically what I'm saying here. But with all that being said, the fact that he would have family and these are the people who are carrying on tradition makes basically what I'm saying here. But with all that being said, the fact that he would have family
like I know it's a pillar, but it looks like
these are the people who are carrying on tradition makes sense. Who else is going to do it?
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And, you know, if we look at the Virgin Mary as a normal Jewish girl, I mean, before the infancy Gospel of James, when she becomes this deified vision in Theotokos, if we just look at her as a historical figure, which she would have been a Jewish girl, 14, 16, however old, you know, and there would be no reason for her not to have other children within the Jewish faith, right? There is nothing that would have said, no, this is the only one. It historically doesn't make sense. So it would have made sense that they would have created a family. And the fact that Joseph is so old is a much later story, right? That's a much later story. And so Joseph...
Yeah, Joseph doesn't show up in the text until the second gospel that's written, and Paul never mentions Joseph.
No, and he never mentioned... You know, what's really fascinating about Paul is he never mentions a virgin birth.
Right.
You think he would have, had that been the situation.
That was the big deal, yeah.
Right? Like, Paul would not have let go of that. You know, I don't know if you know, my mentor for my PhD, his name is Barry Wilson. He wrote a book, How Jesus Became Christian, which is a fantastic thing on Paul. He's like an expert on Paul. And one of the things that we always have these discussions about Paul is like, what was Paul's marketing strategy? And had he heard of a virgin birth for Jesus, that would have been a guarantee he would have been talking about it. But I think because Paul was Jewish himself, he understood Jesus as another historical figure like within his own community, and realized that I don't think he would have thought that, oh my God, we have to add a virgin birth. I think Paul really relied on that vision that he had.
Yeah.
And he didn't say anything about Mary. In fact, he doesn't mention their specialty, like how special she might be, and her connection to nothing. So that tells us, that's how we read history, right? We got, like you said, we read between the lines because someone like Paul thought that Jesus was coming back immediately.
Right.
So he wasn't even really documenting a history.
Punarvasu, the return of the good. And Jesus' year did point to 29 degrees Gemini back in the day, which is that Artemis Punarvasu Asterian Nakshatra that contained Sirius, which is the star of Isis.
Yeah. Now I want to go back to what you were saying about Ephesus and John, because I have a question: is do you think that if say John relocates to Ephesus, he goes to this city, and maybe he's Jewish and he doesn't know much about Artemis, he shows up to this city and he sees this is a temple of Artemis, everyone here worships Artemis, she's the big deal here, and do you think he's contributing to the idea of Mary becoming like Artemis? Because what do you think happens, or is that's just way too speculative?
Okay. And this is just my personal opinion based on some, the research. I don't think that John thought of Mary as a divine being.
Right.
So
It's going to be typical for someone who's of Jewish faith. They're not,
right? I don't
they're not
think,
deifying people. It's very monotheistic. Maybe, yeah.
yeah, I don't think that he expected that she would be Theotokos even. I don't think so. That didn't seem to be in the language at all. And if we are looking at the Gospel of John, the Gospel of John barely mentions Jesus at all. There's no, and actually the Gospel of John, there's no infancy story. So again, another question: if the Gospel of John is written by John the Apostle, maybe John, the brother of Jesus, why is there no mention of a virgin birth?
Right.
Like,
so this is probably a tradition that develops over time.
Right. Yes, in the infancy Gospel of James, the proto-evangelium of James, which is way later, like in 175 or 140, that is really where this is the fan fiction that really lays the foundation for the Virgin Mary and her story. Have you read the infancy Gospel of James ever?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Isn't it? It's very weird. It's like as I call it fan fiction. I know people are like, but even the church calls it fan fiction. They don't use that language.
Yeah, I think a lot of those second century texts would.
Yeah, they say like, this isn't really a truth, but it was a very popular fiction, whatever. But it was so popular. If you think about it, it was so popular that 2,000 years later, we still use it as the source of our Christmas celebrations, of our belief in the Mary as a virgin.
Are we creating fan fictions of our favorite beliefs?
Pre-birth and afterbirth. It like challenges all scientific logic that we know, and yet people have a lot of faith in this particular document. So I think that's the document that really created this deity. And I think that document, even though it doesn't say in the document itself, used like Roman mythology to create,
shape this character.
That's right, to shape her and all that.
Is there anything in that text that you think pops out? Artemis, or Diana, or
a lot. So
okay.
Yeah, a lot, because not necessarily. Well, maybe Artemis, but the fact, like things like Mary has a special birth, right? Like she herself has a virgin birth. I'm sorry, an immaculate conception. So when we talk about the Immaculate Conception, we actually refer to the conception of Mary in the infancy Gospel of James, right? Because Sarah can't have.
That is really interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that point made clear to me. I've never received that. So grateful. That is very, very interesting and quite worth re-examining some of the thoughts that I have been trying to contextualize, because it's like we learn more and more that our intuition, or the way we try to make an easier sense of something, is actually the root of why we complicate it in terms of like just new connections and new imagery and new fictions and stuff, because it would seem so easy and like simple at the end of the day that, I don't know, like you need a whole wordplay to make it like a mysterious story again.
Her mother, Sarah or Anna? Oh my God.
For John?
Mary's mother. I think it's Sarah. Or maybe
yeah. I know Sarah's. I think it's. No, I'm confused. Because Sarah is the wife of Abraham, but she might have the same name though. Yeah.
That's right. So she.
Grandmother.
But so Mary has a special birth because her mother can't get pregnant, right?
Yeah.
She's older too. It's that repetition of the Abraham story.
Yeah.
And so we call Mary's birth, the Virgin Mary's birth, an immaculate conception, because the father is away, and the angel comes to her mother and says, you're going to have this, you're going to give birth to this girl, this baby girl, and you're going to name her Mary. And the baby girl is going to be the body that carries like God. You know what I mean? So there's this long prophecy that he gives her. It's not just that you're going to have a baby girl and this is a miracle, but this baby girl's going to have another miracle, and it's going to be Jesus, right? So in that way, I think that Mary's magic birth connects to a lot of the different births of goddesses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Artemis is born from Leto. I'm not sure that that's that miraculous. I'm not sure that there's any argument that Leto remains a virgin. I don't think the Greeks really thought like that, or even the Romans, right? But then Mary in the infancy gospel of James is treated like a little goddess. She only takes like 7 steps on the earth before she's picked up and carried by angels and fed by virgins. Then she's supposedly taken to the temple. I mean, early Christians in the 2nd century must have thought that the Jewish temple had a daycare. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they knew nothing. They knew nothing. Because it's like, then her parents take her to the temple and drop her off at 2 or 3 years old. You know what I mean? And like all these priests are doing what? They're taking care of this baby girl. How? Where? But they know that she's really special. And then again, she's fed by angels and taken care of by other virgins. And she's like living on sacred ground. So there's something about that they want to say about Mary, that her body, her physical body is divine in a way. It's so sacred. And in that way, I think it touches on the bodies of goddesses, particularly virginal goddesses that are untouched by men, not looked at by men, not walking around on common ground, that are up in Artemis sits on her father's lap and demands for all these things. When she's a little kid, she's like, I want the nymphs, and I want all the wilderness, and I want all these things, and you have to give them to me. And her father gives it to her. And in a way, Mary is treated also like a queen, like a princess from when she's a baby. So there's that sort of overlap. The problem, of course, comes when Mary becomes close to getting her period, and then all the priests freak out. Because now the sacred being that has been raised by angels is going to defile the temple with her blood, right? That's why they give her explosive.
Forgot about that part, yeah.
So they're all freaking out. They're like, oh my God, Mary has become 12 or whatever she is. And what are we going to do about her? Because she's going to defile the temple. And so they come up with this idea of, let's gather all the old men in the village who apparently can't have children anymore. I mean, this is the story. And they're going to put their staff, they literally draw straws. They're going to put their staffs all in the middle. And so they all hold their staffs. And we're told that from Joseph's staff comes a dove. And that's how they know that Joseph must now take this child that is about to menstruate at some point to his home. And of course, Joseph is an old man. And he comes and he says in this story, not the Bible, he said, I'm an old man, I already have children, I'm a widower, what do I need this 12-year-old kid for? And then they're like, God has put you in charge of her, blah, blah. Then they very specifically make sure that they say, he takes her to his home, and leaves. He leaves for 4 years to build houses. Right? So once again, she remains untouched. In that way, again, she's like a divine body. Right? She is kind of like a goddess in a sense. She's untouchable and untouched.
And that's what Artemis is kind of known for, is being she gets that title virgin, first of all.
Yes.
Parthenos.
Yes.
And she's known for not having like a male counterpart or like a husband or anything. She's just the virgin goddess.
And unmarried, because Virgin Mary is not technically married to Joseph in this text.
Yeah.
In the Bible, it's unclear because, marriages were not the way we think of marriages today, right? I mean, rich people got married. People didn't always get married.
I have to wonder just if you watch Clay Nocti's video on Punarvasu and what she calls beast curse, it's really having all this love to give to the world, but it's like the world wants to eat that flesh. They want to, like, yeah. And I think that's what makes the Punarvasu son so inclined towards acting like the quote-unquote finicky cat yoni, because the moon looks like a scythe, and it was in Scorpio conjunct Anteros, and it makes me think about, for example, I have Jupiter conjunct my moon, and it's like I need to walk this untouchable ground within my imagination in terms of how I need to love something, because I know that the love that I feel within myself is the source of the love that I know, and therefore extending that to that which I don't know, it can be frightening, because you don't know how it's going to taint you or bind you, or just the wholeness of it all being penetrated, as Punarvasu is the Aditi, it is the cusp of magic, air, water, it is the most ethereal but also the densest of Jupiterian energy and karma, because like, I'm always trying to be the apple of my daddy, you know what I mean? Like, I want for everything that is power has made me fully born and armored within myself to have consciousness, because when you have a dad that is there to, like, be a total, like I love my dad, right? As much as I think he can also do some things better, like Zeus is not without his criticism, right? Like, there's an Athenian part to myself, and a Artemisian part, and an Apollonian part to myself, that all kind of, like, it's like Isis, Osiris, Nephthys rejecting Set, as, like, the fact that I have this Aries Saturn deposed, Aries Saturn in the 5th situation as well, where it's like the way I need to scythe myself through the geometry of reality, it simultaneously cuts and mutates me just as much as it flowers and macaras into all these inspirations and lusts and Jupiterian abundances that I stream from myself. And that's why I've had this needing to retreat and center myself within the tower that I was building, because I needed to see what my energetic expanse, my measuring stick of the waters and all of that, what is my magic, and then really knowing that beyond the defilement of words like Holy Spirit and positive, negative, neutral, trifold, light, electromagnetism of the whole scientific Nietzschean nihilistic God is dead because our equation Sheldon Cooper killed him, you know what I mean, and losing the art and the beauty and the imbibing spirits of all these enigmatic factors, all these star power influence factors, all these magic factors, having white magic, dark magic, gray magic, and all these things. Like, where is the freaking color? Where is the life? You know what I mean? And like this transparency notion and this, yeah, hidden notion of things, actives and passives, zeros and ones. That's the binding binary that our sun in Pisces experience in relation to Sirius. So that Isis, Andromeda, Cassiopeia, Queen of Ethiopia notion of the Black Madonna becoming like this mermaid, Makara bloodline of royal Maleucine notion through the Christ impulse. And I don't really know what that says about why we have LGBTQ and especially just transgenderism. Um, sorry, I want to say transgenderism arising because of the hormonal alchemy that can bring these opposites together within the crucible of self. And having ancient cultures like the Vedics have what they have, and even if we look at America, maybe they have it not as like Eastern openly, and they have it in a more logically veiled way. It's like they are telling you, but it's not like they are telling you. Like Mariah Carey is a Farinelli, Shatibishak, Aegean mermaid, Utrabhadrapada, but like her birth chart tells you this, and Claire Nakti subtly tells you this, and the Shatana of the light code, lockdown of the waters and fires, of the frosts and the pyres, and just the divine pymander of you, man, and the colors of the wind coming together in just like how we literally spell reality with our very being, and we muse and braid our hair and we sing our wishes into wellnesses, and yeah, we coined the mint of all the Urania of that Orphic Pythia coming to island, coming to shore, coming to be beached, Moana, and learning the law of the land. You know, there's like common law, and then there's like maritime admiralty law, and it's just like it's been a lot. I'm not gonna lie. Like on a like just level of like needing to push through while having fears and confusion, that has been a lot, but I am very grateful that I'm still here and alive, and I could experience that Scorpio moon that we are having tonight with such a true sense of, I've spoken to some of my high priestesses in my mermaid speak across time of what is in the waters of life in my bloodline when I had my gnosis experience. You know, I'm not gonna compare it to like ayahuasca or schizophrenia, but if it was anything fear related, it was an experience of my images that I was unconsciously needing to be the negative space by which my constructions of the heavens could find its microcosm in the earth. You know, the depravities of what wasn't there was in fullnesses and statements, yeah, um and it's just like I needed to like it's like I was having also like this Icarus moment and this burning in water on the river Styx moment. Like, oh, I literally like I can't even describe it, but like I just like I remember like just like some of the funniest parts. Um, because I was like, yo, I'm literally like feeling so into the unknown right now. Like I all I can say is like I know nothing, but I'm not to be disempowered by knowing that I know everything that I know I'm hearing and experiencing and um have memories and resonances of truth to know where it's coming from and like having desires and intentions of where it needs to go because I was like I want to be on earth. I don't want to like those angels on Noah, the movie with Jared Butler, that bursting out of the rock light ascension moment and then like it's like leaving the earth like oh you held me down and I couldn't be free and it's like no I literally like it was like there was this echidna like Vulcanalian, Hephaestion, Cthulian, Flotsam Jetsam, Black Goo, Ice Age, to the meltdown creature of Eternals thawing around the shadows and like prakrital mud of the light flood. Ugh, it was like there was no dimensions anymore. It was like I was on the other side of water that had the whole world in it without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and there was just like this curtain into which my word parted the life that was asking to sing with like the arcs of covenants into which the eternal expression can have being. Not to give names in creation where anything cannot be more than what they seem because they will need to be alive and they will need to be conscious of making choices while they dream. So yeah, like it's like I was talking to our activenesses and passivenesses and our male and female and our man and womb man parts at a very like cosmic level I feel to myself because I needed my archetypal cosmology to like all sit together and I needed to find like my wholeness and my purpose and my spear and my techne and my intellect and I needed to find that which thou art is never amiss in just the return of the good of everything, every image that I could have been frightened of. It was like it became sanctified and sacred because it was the power of the Supreme that could have vision and light to withstand all that would hide in that dark stream of the water fire fight, making the black goo cream of separation, fear from delight. And now I'm just being poetic because like I'm tapping into like a Rashad meets Bro Polite and I'm trying to be insightful and not give anyone a fright, but even Shoshana said with smokiness that the Saraswati in your being is always the radiance that makes you bright. And in the waning of my other self, the incandescence can enlight the darkness of my being, the dream for which I fight. And therefore, feeling like my life being like this world stage screening moment of a tapping into the matrix. Yeah, it's like every instinct, every sense that I had, everything that I could know was like, it was like going through like a multiverse of all the physics that could be, and like just being what I needed to be through all of those choices as like a spiritual warfare for myself, right? As like not having it flipped into this um insidious moment of like not being inhabited by my chosen ones or my family or my claimed roots and um connections astrally, spiritually, hyperdimensionally, because it was like I was telling the powers that want to bend these words into just what it like selfishly means, just to like invert it all back to like, making them the deity of it. um it's like I was hearing that like just House Atreides' responsibility of tuning the spice, and once again, like why I feel like I channeled the song of Fauzia called Desert Rose. Um, you know, I dream of rain, and there it lay. I dream of God is in the desert sand. I wake in vain, let it lay. I dream of love as time runs through my hand. I dream of fire, lay. These dreams are tied to a horse that'll never tire, and in this flames he lays, with the shadows playing in the shape of a man's desire. This desert rose, each of her veils a secret promise. This desert rose he laid, with no sweet perfume ever tortured me more than this. Dead and in the dead, where Celestial will sail you, where Celestial will sail you, where Celestial always say.
People didn't always get married.
No, I want to say something about that though, because somebody might be sitting here saying that text is so late, it's not part of the canon, who cares? But first of all, that text would have been just as important or relative in its time period had it been 2 centuries before the canon was, even a thing. Before that word canon even was, no one even knew what that word was until 4th century.
That's right.
That text would have been very important.
Mariah Maria, she had her canon, did she not? Saint Nick for Christmas. Wow, these things speak to everything else. Oh, like my brain cannot, but like, ooh, I love that I can think of it and know that like that root has like it's my mint, it's my track, and like I just can't be like paid to not tell the truth or not paid and spited when I do. You know what I mean? Like, stop this astral bitcoining of our originality, please. And, like, give us what we need to just release what we need to release. And not release ignorance and darkness in ways that are not constructive, because like there's a time when ignorance is constructive, like when a child needs to mature to certain concepts in their understanding before they are introduced to new and evolving holisms that analogously link to those. So I'm just appreciating like my Saturn return coming with me with like this is the adult definitions of things. Like, yeah, it's a little sexual and it's a little crazy and it's like everything that makes my parents' marriage even sacred as a DV situation, just in terms of the letters. Because, like, look at me now, like, I'm the alchemical product of opposites fighting it out and loving each other because there was a unification of the both and within the individual objective separation of what I subjectively mean to them. And now I can be like my own person, but I know I'm every part of them because I am their story, I am their pymander, I am their braid into the future. And I just needed to like, take back the words that made me turn my spear against what was important because I wanted to give up on things that I felt like wasn't getting me anywhere because it wasn't changing the people that I wanted to see a difference in. But the attitudes within myself that I was chained to, just in terms of saying this is where power lies, or this is where sacredness lies, or this is where masculine is gendered, and this is where feminine is gendered, and like it was like I needed to like find this encompassing forgiveness and compassion to understand that yes, on one level of reality I was a child of like abuse and witnessing abuse and things like that, but in an evolution of that reality I am an alchemist, I am a psychologist, I am a hera giver, I am a like I know the silence of my own slaughtered lambs, of my own innocence and all the perpetual death within myself. Scorpio 29 degrees tropical. I needed to Neptune 29 degrees Capricorn Makara from to Yod back to my Punarvasu sun because I have those placements in the 12th, 2nd and 7th. And I have Pluto in Mula in Sagittarius, and I have my ascendant in like the very cusp of Purva and Uttra Ashada, and it's in the Leo Decan, and it's just everything that my ninth house needs to understand within the fullness of myself, like having a sun in the 7th house with Leo in the 9th. As a Gemini sun, and as a design sun in Pisces, there's just so much that I feel like I can learn by having these, um, like the mutable divine masculine is Jupiter, and the mutable divine feminine is Venus Mercury in that Revati sense where it gets exalted into the collapse of its own Ashwini Kumara, seeing the head of the cult on the other side of the water. Within the Kiki of at Purke's Lake, you know, um, I do have Irish in my family. I do have Chinese. I have so many different bloodlines that come together in me, and it's like I needed to be an aid to them to find genealogy back to source again through all of this confusion, and not find it in this eugenic racehorse Rashad Jamal cut up of the world, but finding it in my Nelson Mandela Rainbow Nation dream of my programming, because it's like there were good ideals sprinkled in there as well, and do I know all the spelling of they constructed the notion upon an edifice of words and preconceived things that once they had this final thing, all of the other things as substratums needed to like support that and like torch through that. It's like they build a pyre for the pyramid and then they like cut off the top, and then like that becomes that pine cone Mesopotamian symbol of like how your drishti gaze and your yod, your fingerprint of God through your genius goes up, lighting the world and changing minds and changing realities and opening doorways. Very much just like the Keykeeper channel. So metaphysically, if you are ready to imbibe, that is what's on offer as well. But we should start talking unity speak so that we are not disconnecting ourselves from like Bitcoining our own value, and feedback looping ourselves through our creation and our joy and elation, the way I've been inserting myself into the realities of Slick Dissident and Scorpio Man um and people that I've just had so much life given to me by finding the breath of life, the expanse of the universe measured by their living words, because when those living words were captured, they could never deny the essence of what inspired them. That's why they even say like Indian mantras, when you recite them enough, they will start taking you back to the purest vibrations of like what things originally meant. And so yeah, I've seen my own butterfly effect. I've seen the Nietzschean choice moment of like turning away to be a yes sayer because we want to make things beautiful. And all we can really hope for is that we can do that in a pure way. That's why, for example, for me spiritually, I am not like a physically promiscuous person, but like, do I know I have a very healthy lust? Yes. So because I can appreciate beauty, I can appreciate just life, and therefore like knowing that all life is life, I don't lust for myself by trying to consume that life. I express myself by finding the constructive avenues of channeling that. because it's not constructive to walk in the street and find everybody attractive and moon Cupido Scorpio 29 degrees in the 12th house, Jeshta Mula Pluto, Jeshta Moon, and then like, you just radiate this like